I can tip it back some. I just can't see Allison if we're on.
Going live.
I would push it up like she's far up.
Okay.
Okay. We will call to order this meeting of the Woodford County Board of Education on November 8th, 2021. And note that 4 members are present here and Ms. Richardson is present virtually. The next item is an opportunity for public or audience comment. I believe there is one submitted, so Ms. Bailey will read that for us.
Okay, there is just one tonight. It is from Marty and George Day. Board members and Mr. Adkins, when will you all be discussing the following in an open meeting? 1. An update on the open forum held on October 26th. Many suggestions and concerns were brought up that night from teachers, parents, and community members. How will those be addressed? A meeting with the high school faculty and staff was said to be in the near future, but has not been announced yet. Will they be able to meet with the architects to determine what can be done to improve the current design? Will the email shared by Michelle Nance about the KDE square footage guidelines be discussed with those teachers impacted? Number 2, an update on the new high school plans. What meetings have happened since the last board meeting? What decisions were made in those meetings? What are the financial implications of those decisions? Please be aware that I emailed my board member to find out when these items would be discussed on the board agendas. Ms. Bradley did not reply. As her constituents, we find that it is in direct conflict with her duties as a board member. If this board is going to regularly talk about transparency and the value of community input, then that should be the responsibility of all involved. Sincerely, Marty and George Day.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Okay, next item on the agenda is the instructional update from Mr. Asher.
Good evening, hello. 56th day of school completed today. That's my thing now, I'm just gonna announce where we're at. But that is only 9 days since I last reported here, so I'll be honest, I don't have a whole lot to report since the last time, but I do have a few things. When I was last up here, I mentioned that we had our November 1st PD day coming up. All went well there. All of our schools completed the final module of the cultural responsiveness. So that was a big piece of our equity action plan. So we have that element done. Beyond that, the remainder of the day's agenda was up for school control and just a few things that they did at elementary level. Elevations training. Elevations is a new platform. Actually, we've had it, but we expanded it. That is geared towards differentiating for English language learners. So a portion spent on that. And also differentiation for all learners was another segment that the elementaries combined, like 2 elementaries together, morning and then afternoon session that they did there. There was some health and safety training beyond the cultural responsiveness done at the middle school. And then here at the high school, they did some teacher-led sessions. So teachers were able to submit things that they were being successful, had interest in, and other teachers were able to rotate through and attend those. So all went well on our November 1st PD day. I do know that those embedded days, again, I can speak from principal experience, are appreciated. Just kind of, it's hard to do all of that in the summer, so to have embedded days are effective. I also, last time I was up here, mentioned our learning walk process, that we were beginning that once again. We're still in the midst of that, just have a couple schools to go, but I will say it has been a very positive experience so far. 2 main things that have stood out at every building we've been in is just the positive environment. And one of the elements of Elliott is respect and rapport, and we are seeing that throughout. So that's definitely a positive. And also just the level of student engagement. Regardless if they're wearing masks or have to be spaced out, the level of student engagement and we've been elementary through high so far, high school, and that has really stood out in each building we've been in as well. So very positive results there. And I also want to note that it's been great because the team that goes in is made up of other administrators. So it's also a learning experience for them as well, just to see what's going on at other schools. So both sides benefit from that process. Finally, in terms of instructional, our CDIP will be coming, as well as CSIPs. Those are district improvement plans and school improvement plans. At least the first draft of those will be coming next month. So I'll be bringing that to you. I do want to make mention, last year when we did this process, it was a 3 to 5 year plan, and this year, 21, is year 3 of that. Of course, that was developed before pandemic, so what we're in the process of, I've started kind of doing the preliminary work before we bring the committee in, what elements will remain, but then obviously due to the past 20 months, what are we going to change? So again, I'll be bringing that to you at my report in December. So that's it for instructional. Equity, usually our meetings line up to where we meet just before this, but we are scheduled for next week. The only update I would have, I already mentioned the training that was done for teachers, but also that book study. I was able to send that out, and so far, pretty good interest. Over 20 have replied back. What I realized, did you all get it as Woodford Exchange? No? I will send it to you specifically if you'd like to at least just see the information if you choose to sign up as well.
Sure,
but that
thank
would
you.
be the only element for my equity update.
All right.
Any questions?
I don't think so. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Real quick on the instructional piece, and you were there today too. We went over to Huntertown today. They had their first STEAM day, and very
saw that.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Kids were having a blast. They were coding robots. First graders, I got to go to first graders. They were over coding robots, the Dash robots, and it was just awesome. They were having a blast. I mean, it's just Elaine was there too. Just a lot of fun being had, a lot of learning taking place, learning the sequencing of punching this, and this, and then go for the robot to go. So a lot of good things went on over there. I want to thank Miss Amanda Best and Miss Elaine Kaiser for putting that together. A great program. They had several folks from within the community come in too, so they had brought some of their own equipment. So it was a great day.
That's great. The pictures looked like it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was.
All right, thank you for that. Next item is to review the board agenda. And so next week, prior to our regularly scheduled meeting, we will have our budget meeting, that we try to have at least one each year, to take a deeper dive into things than we do during our normally scheduled meetings. So we will have that, and that's the only item on the work session agenda. So we will move then to our regular board meeting agenda, and on that, under proposed amendments to the agenda, I would add an item if we could tonight. Grant, do we need to vote to add it tonight, or can we just discuss an item tonight and then add it next week?
You can do it either way. I mean, the process of building the agenda is part of the purpose of tonight's meeting. So if there's consensus, I don't think you have to have a formal vote.
Okay, thank you. The item I would add is in each December we approve the board meeting calendar for the following year, and I would like to have discussion about whether or not the board feels like we need to move forward with a 2-meeting schedule each month, or if we can be effective with just a single board meeting each month. It would be a savings to the district to just condense them to one meeting, and I know most districts throughout Kentucky just have a single board meeting. I think if we were to do that, and if the board decided that was the path they wanted to take, Ms. Cooper would still upload the agenda a week in advance so that we have time to see everything and review the agenda and all the pertinent items. And then it would just take away the need to set up all of the equipment multiple times and gather everyone multiple times a month. We would still have months where I would anticipate that we would still have months where we would need to have more than one meeting for things like the work session when we do the budget, or the data session when we go over all of the test scores and academic data. But I wanted to put that on our agenda this month so that everyone had time to think about that and see if they thought that was a direction that we wanted to go before we vote to approve the calendar in December. And that would also allow Ms. Cooper time to draft a calendar that took that into account. So if anyone has any discussion on that tonight, or we can add that as a discussion item for next week's agenda.
I'd be fine adding it as a discussion item to vote on for next week.
I think we would do it as a discussion item next week and then an action item
Okay.
approving the calendar option in December.
Okay. Yep, I'd be fine with that.
Okay. Does that sound good to you, Ms. Springate?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to always kind of revise and visit how we do things. And so I think that it seems like a perfect time to add it on for discussion. So that sounds fine to me.
All right. Ms. Richardson?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. So we will add that. Thank you, Ms. Cooper. All right. The next item is the Superintendents Report. So Mr. Adkins will give that next week, and announce the Superintendent Holidays Card Artwork winner. Do you want to?
And by the way, next week they'll be here. Parents and the student will be here, so we'll get a chance to celebrate them and publicly, I think, show at that point what the card looks like, because we've already had it printed. Beautiful
They're
card.
always so much fun.
Yeah. So excited for that part.
All right, and then the audit presentation. Do we want to go over that tonight?
I think we're still waiting for the hard copy. Am I correct, from the audit company?
The auditor will be able to provide the presentation a week from tonight.
Okay. Ms. Richardson, they said the auditor will be here to give their presentation a week from tonight.
I do have a request. If we
Okay,
could
thank
possibly get a copy of the presentation or the report prior to the meeting. I know it's typically a very thick presentation, and that might be something we want to review before we vote on it.
Yes, ma'am. We'll get that. We'll try to get that to everybody. Mr. Martello's thinking it'll come between the two meetings. So at that point, when we get it, we'll shoot it out to everybody. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. So that brings us to Mr. Martello and the Treasurer's Report.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley. Tonight I'll be presenting the monthly treasurer's report, and like every month, this includes the monthly expenditure and revenue report, the balance sheet, and the cash balance by fund report. Bear with us 1 second. We're trying to get the PowerPoint. Okay, go ahead. One more, and then one more. For the monthly expenditure report, are there any questions on that document?
On the Munis document?
Yes, ma'am. On the monthly summary.
Is that page 3?
That is page 3 of the PowerPoint.
Okay.
And then let's go to the next slide if no questions. The balance sheet, slide 4. Any questions there? If not, we'll go ahead and go to the one that we go in depth on, which is the cash balance by fund. Just as a highlight, as a correction, on the general fund, when I go back and look, we actually received the October payment in the month of November, so our fund balance, in terms of cash, the large dollar amount actually comes in on around the 10th of November. So we've got one more month in terms of our general fund being low in terms of the new tax revenue that'll come in on around the 10th. And so just as a point of reference there. On the special revenue fund, again, we're in the positive in terms of the balance. It's not unheard of, like we've seen in the past, where some of those federal funds are forward funded. activity and district and school activity funds, fairly similar. Capital outlay, you see the balance there, the building fund, as noted. And then let's go to the next slide and then we'll come back. Construction fund, you can see that negative dollar amount, just as a caution, you know, that well over 400,000 is to the architect. So that fund is in balance or is in a negative. If the bonds were to sell in this fiscal year, then that would replenish that negative balance or that negative expense for the architect that would occur this fiscal year. Just as a note, and skipping down, again, the food service or the debt service is net to zero. Where the payment, that's an in and out account, like I've talked about in previous months. Food service fund, daycare, as noted, it's $234,000 for the ending balance currently. Remember, this is cash, and then the community ed operation. So let's go back up one slide.
Just
Yes, ma'am.
real quick on that, would you mind to provide a 12-month balance on the food service fund?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Real quick too, it's becoming more and more prevalent with our food service that Ms. Squire's having a harder time finding materials or supplies, not materials, but supplies. We don't feed our kids materials, we feed them supplies. So she's having a very hard time right now, much like everybody else, finding those supplies. Menus have to change and those types of things in order for us right now. And she's done a really good job because she's been doing, like I reported last month, she's been making things out of from scratch and those types of things. So we're very fortunate to have a culinary art degree as our food service director. So it really helps when you know what you're doing. So she's done a good job with that. But go ahead, Ms.
Well, and I think that's a perfect opportunity for all of us to pass along our thanks to Ms. Squire and to all of our food service workers in all of the schools. They do a great job for all of our students every day and staff.
Okay. At the top right, the CARES expenditures, nearly have liquidated that first round of CARES. The GEARS has been liquidated. ESSER 2, you can see the 1.7 expenditure, and then the ESSER 3, the 753,000 expenditure, and then the current balance on the one-to-one device balance for that activity fund. Any questions on the cash balance by fund report? Turning the slides. So every month I present and show that balance of that community education fund, and it's a much smaller amount compared to the overall funds. But I thought it would be good to give you a little bit more detail in terms of what exactly comprises that fund year to date. I know we've touched about it briefly, so I put the time and effort in to give you some descriptions. So those funds are generated from donations and activity, and with the inception of that fund, is my understanding, a lot of those dollars came from the educational programs that we would do for the community in the areas of art and fitness and computer classes as examples. And obviously fewer of those classes are offered with the pandemic and just with the participation currently. So that's where a lot of those dollars were generated through. But currently, some of the active projects that we do are the early childhood school readiness event, and that's for kids under the age of 4, as well as our reality store. And the reality store, we haven't done the last couple of years because of the pandemic with that physical interaction. But as you can see, it's where hundreds of middle school students participate in a simulation of adult life by spending a monthly budget on necessities at booths manned by over 80 local volunteers. So they get that real world experience and trial going through that great opportunity that our staff put on, as well as the volunteers. So we're very appreciative, and hopefully one day when we get back into a more in-person setting, that can get started again. That's been a great great opportunity for kids in the community to provide that experience. So just wanted to give that real quick blurb there, and I appreciate Ms. Hogg in providing some of these details for me to get that out. I know we talk about it every month, and it's a very small balance to the overall picture, but it's a great program that needs to be pointed out. That's coming through that community education fund. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please, and one more. Real quick, Mr. Green, he's been on at least 2 or 3 months now. We're going through each building and doing just a brief assessment, more so for the small items. Mr. Green replaced Mr. Burnett, and so they have done a great job with the department. But it's always good to get out into those schools and do a walkthrough, classroom by classroom, with those building principals and those head custodians, just to make sure we go over any work orders that may need to be turned in for anything that may be for a loose door handle that needs to be repaired, or a sink that's leaking that constantly has a problem, and just to have that one-on-one interaction or group setting and do a physical walkthrough and make sure that we're being supportive and customer friendly with the people that we serve in our buildings. So the goal of these things is to bring up some of the cosmetic or just day-to-day functions that can be fixed if there's any concern. And so that's been positive, I feel, with the last 2 buildings that we've done, where our goal is to walk away with some work orders on things that need to be addressed, and we have done that. And so, and like I tell the principals and the leadership, we may not have 6 figures to fix, some of the things that they would like to see different, or 200,000, but we do have the funds to fix a sink or a door handle, or provide signage for safety and security, or some of those things that we can do fairly quickly and cheaply to make sure our kids are warm, safe, and dry. So I think that's a positive thing that we're doing, and we're going to knock those out through the fiscal year, and only positive. So just wanted to point that out.
And also, we are running into those same materials and parts issues as well, aren't we? As finding
Yes, sir.
parts to fix things because of the lag time, I guess.
Yes, sir.
And they're not available right now.
Sure, and that's a great point, Mr. Atkins. As an example, we had a middle school basketball game that was to occur. Middle school basketball game was to occur the other night, and they went just a fluke. They went to put the goal either up or down, and the motor broke on the device, so they had to cancel the game. Unfortunately, just because it was unforeseen, but just to get that part for that motor, they couldn't. They say it was months to get that back, or to get a specific part. So Mr. Green and his team scrambled to make sure those kids had an opportunity to have athletic events period concerning basketball in the very near future because of part shortage. And so that's just one example of the team going above and beyond to make sure the kids and the staff are supported to have their needs met. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. And our monthly update on the high school status. Just one item, and one more, please. One more slide. It's one item, but it was a pretty significant, a positive event that occurred on the 26th, where I know a majority of the people in this room attended and had some great feedback, and just one item to note there.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Martello. Does any board member have any questions for Mr. Martello? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item will be the consent agenda.
Yeah, when we look at the consent agenda, again, we start at the top with approved donation request. We have, it's typical, boosters, that type of thing, nothing out of the ordinary. I hope one of these days I can come in here and say something out of the ordinary has happened. We have gotten
There's a reason they're in the
$5
consent
million
agenda.
donated. I hope so, but I hope it comes. I think it will. Approved fundraiser requests. Again, it's your book fairs, those types of things. Travel requests. I don't think there's anything an outlier there anywhere. No, it was just your basic travel. Our hardship apps, we actually had to add one today to aid this student in a graduation for December. So that was added today. And then our KEPS offer, our first offer. Bob, do you recall exactly what that KEPS offer was? Was it
Yeah, it was around 30 grand.
30 grand? I was thinking 28 for some reason, 24, 28. Okay. Approve rescinding policy of academic honors. Ryan, do you want to explain that, or do we need any explanation? Basically, the policy is obsolete, is what's happened. KSBA recommended we not necessarily rescind it, but revise it, but I think it's pretty well obsolete now in the council. The site-based council has.
It actually has some old references to like CAT scores and things like that. And really everything that was in there is covered either through our graduation policy or through the student handbook here at the high school.
So, Ms. Richardson, what he said is that the policy was obsolete. It had references to tests that we don't do anymore, or things that are covered in other policies like graduation and things like
We
that.
spoke of the CATS test, and that was 15 years ago,
Sure.
maybe longer ago. So yeah.
All right, then we'll move into our regular agenda items that has the notification of personnel matters and payment of bills. And then it looks like we have an item to approve the meeting minutes of October 25th, and then approve the meeting minutes of October 26th. And then the next item is approve the audit report. So Ms. Springate has requested that we get that when you guys have it. So if you
As soon
would,
as Mr. Martello gets that, then and I'm assuming it will come to you. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we'll shoot that out to everyone.
all right. And the next item is approve the Woodford County High School emergency structural bleacher repairs construction documents. Mr. Martello, do you want to go through that, please?
And I'm just gonna reference that. We won't have the formal presentation tonight, and honestly, it will not be a formal presentation next week. This is basically a formality in the process to go forward for the bleacher repair after January 1. With the process, you have to have the construction documents approved, and they're just itemizing by the work with Ross Tarrant and Mr. Michael Hughes, noting the work that's going to be done, and it's mainly a construction process that has to be formally approved by the school board. It's just a set of two documents for the specifications and the drawings. And so basically itemizing what we've been talking about for a period of time in assessing and determining the best pathway to ensure safety for the kids.
And so that then will allow us to bid this project?
Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. So our goal is to, and just as a recap, when we first found out the situation, it was treated as an emergency, as it should be. That process was done with KDE and assessing exactly how we were going to fix the bleachers and what manner in terms of the cost and making sure it's safe for the kids. So we were rushing to try to get it fixed as soon as we could after assessing the different options. But then we held back per the request of the high school because we wanted to ensure that as many low attendance basketball games could occur this fiscal year or this school year, as well as the ACT, which doesn't end until the second week of March. And so with that said, these construction documents approval will allow us to have a tentative date of the first week of January to put out that bid opportunity with a tentative date of a bid closing on the 20th of January. And I caution tentative. So
sure.
Our goal is to bring to you the bid results in the month of January, if we were to have a board meeting the fourth Monday, or I guess since there's a holiday in that month, that Tuesday, potentially from the work of the bid results on the 20th of January, with at the very earliest construction starting on the 14th of March. Again,
Just after the
tentative.
ACT.
Just after the ACT,
Okay.
so we provide that opportunity for the kids with the great wireless connection and wireless connectivity that is in the gym. It's a great resource to allow that. So we stepped back, making sure we met the needs of instruction as best we could after assessing the situation. And again, those are tentative dates, but that's what we're looking at.
All right. Any board members have any questions for Mr. Martello on this item?
I just have a comment. I'm really hopeful that it sounds like this repair will be done before the start of the next school year, hopefully before August. Is that the timeline?
That's our goal. That is our goal. Again, we're always, as we've seen supply delays and steel delays, that is our goal.
But that is one of the pieces of going ahead and trying to bid it soon, so they can go ahead and order the materials and have it ready by the time we get to start. Yeah.
That sounds great. I guess you'll just keep us up to date on that, because I definitely don't want that to fall off the radar. I guess this first came to our attention last summer, and so I just hopefully a year will be enough time to get that repair done. And if there's anything that we can do to kind of move that along or help with that, or do anything kind of early to make sure that we stay on track, I definitely think that's something that we would want to do. So thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Martello.
Thank you.
Next item is old business, and there's none noted. And then we have communications and then discussion items. We've added the board meeting calendar and possibly switching to a single meeting schedule for the board. And Mr. Adkins, do you know if we have any need for an executive session next week? We'll just plan accordingly.
To my knowledge, plan accordingly if something were to come up.
Sure. Something that we may need to put on the radar for an upcoming meeting is just an update on any litigation matters, so that the new board members could be brought up to speed on anything that we have outstanding. Mr. Chenoweth, would you be available next week to come and do that?
I can. I can get with the attorneys that are representing you in a couple pieces of litigation to find a current status update.
I think that would be great. I think something that we've kind of had planned, and be good to go ahead and get that done.
Well, that'd be good for me as well. I think I'm up to date on most of it, but I would,
Sure.
just make sure I've got everything covered as well.
All right. Ms. Schrock, anything that you want to share this week?
No, but go football.
That's
No football team, there you go.
That's right. All right. Any other items for any board member?
We have another discussion item.
Yep,
Is
that brings us, I'm sorry,
Yes.
go ahead.
This
to
other
the-
discussion item.
To our planning,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
I'll go
To the end
planning.
of the regular meeting board agenda, and we will go back to our planning session agenda, and we have a discussion item that is leave for booster shots.
Yeah, Ms. Springate had asked me to discuss that, to add that to the agenda. And kind of in our discussion, I almost feel like that our 10 COVID leave days would cover that. But, it's certainly open for discussion. I think, Kelly, and Garrett, have we had many folks that have had to take a day because of the booster, or
Garrett, if you want to come up and weigh in on this one and just give
kinda
us your
update us.
overview on
I know
how.
we've had some conversation, but
Hate to put you on the spot.
Sure. Anecdotally speaking, I've been told from schools that we've had a handful of staff that, because we did some shots, I think, last Monday, that there might have been a handful that had some issues the following day. By and large, I'm hearing that there hasn't been a widespread big issue with side effects. I know myself, I got my booster. It was a much different experience than when I had my second shot the first time, and I've heard a lot of that, but have there been some staff and some issues? Yeah, I think there have been, but not near as what we experienced back in the spring.
The health department also had given us kind of a little bit of a heads up that it wasn't as severe as what they had seen. Still a few issues, but nothing like what they had seen.
So Garrett, do you have a recommendation on if using the emergency COVID leave is appropriate for the booster shots? Is there?
So I've only had one staff member reach out to me, and my response to them was, are you able to telecommute? They're like, yeah, I think I could probably work from home. I just don't think I can come in. So that's what we did. We just did a telecommuting option. I've not had any employees reach out to me.
We've been really good too, Garrett, about
Yeah.
letting folks, if they have those issues, just telecommute. We still have to put a sub in there, but still,
Yeah,
we're not losing instruction.
I've not had any employee reach out to me that I recall asking to use COVID leave, what was approved by the board to use for that. So, yeah, I hate to do this, but I would almost defer to Grant. Are there any legal issues, any legal things that we need to think about, or that the board needs to think about before permitting us to use it for something other than what the board has already determined, which was for the quarantines and the positive cases?
And we've also basically said anything COVID related, we could use the 10 COVID days for, right? If we could, am I correct?
Well, I think what the board had approved previously was specific to quarantines for themselves, quarantines for their children, things that weren't covered quarantine-wise or positive case-wise, that wasn't covered under the state's quarantine leave, what they had approved. And what the board approved was the COVID leave, to kind of fill in the gaps that the state quarantine leave did not fill in.
Okay. Grant, is there anything you want to add on this item?
I think what Mr. Wells just said is about all that I would have to say, is that the existing leave probably was not written broadly enough to include, if you wanted to give, essentially not make somebody dip into their sick leave in order to deal with getting a booster shot. So if the board wanted to expand that, the last leave that you approved, to expand it just a little bit to facilitate anybody who is unable to telecommute and unable to work because of side effects of the booster shot, it would not take much to add that to the policy, to just make it clear you don't want people to dip into their sick leave just to do the responsible thing of getting the booster shot if they're eligible for it and if they're willing to do it.
Okay. How much, do you have any data that you could send us on how much are we having staff having to use their the 10 days?
Yeah, we can pull that because that's entered into our database, and so we have an accurate accounting of who's used COVID leave up to this point. Yes,
okay.
We can do that.
I just wondered if it's going to be a big strain to to include this, if it's going to push a lot of people over that 10 days, or if it's just a few, like you said, a handful, then it's probably not that big of a deal to rework the leave description under those 10 days.
Yeah, I can absolutely pull those numbers for you.
Okay.
And get those to you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Then is there go ahead.
I have one more thing. Our cheerleaders, they won regionals, right?
They
Under
did.
Tasha.
They did.
So that's also good. Our sports are going really well this year, so
They really are.
super proud of us.
For sure. And we did get an email from Emily Downey in the Chamber of Commerce with some fun suggestions to kind of energize the town and get everybody excited for this week's football game and interact with some of our businesses in Midway and Versailles, and that was a welcome thing for all of us. It's fun to see those things on the board agenda. So if there's nothing further, is there a motion to adjourn? There's a motion by Ms. Springate. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Glass. All those in favor say aye. Aye. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you all for coming.